Hello and welcome to Meet the Mason, where we interview Masons as they share their experiences and life stories. So today I have a very special guest, Shelby Chandler. He was the master of Fredericksburg Lodge No. 4 in 2011. He led us through a very tumultuous time after a pretty nasty earthquake that happened. He took really great care of us. He's marked for being our lodge historian and an outstanding historical figure in our lodge. He's the charter master of the George Washington Masonic Lodge of Research and a past district deputy grand master. In fact, the third, if I remember correctly.
Technically fourth, but yes.
Okay, the fourth. So, first off, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here with us today.
Well, my brother, thank you for having me. It's a privilege to be here to help out.
Absolutely. So, here on Meet the Mason, we have a handful of just really basic questions, and then it kind of evolves from there. So tell us, Brother Shelby, who were you before Freemasonry?
That's a loaded question. I was quite a few people, I guess, over time. My life is in many phases, much like a gypsy. Started off, my family came out of Kentucky. I guess for origin purposes, John Chandler came to America in 1610. They stayed in Virginia, moved around after the Revolutionary War, and ended up getting land in Kentucky, and they remained there till about World War II. My grandfather ended up in World War II in the Pacific, and when he came back home, he went across California, fell in love with it, and pretty much got the family to pack up, and they got rid of everything and made their way to California. And it was only in the 90s that many of us came back to Virginia. And here I am. I guess our family has been around since that timeline. My family is either military or law enforcement. And I'm very proud of that heritage myself. My dad was he had a fifth grade education. He had severe dyslexia, and he was forced to use his right hand when he was a kid. He ended up getting out of school in the fifth grade. He used to tease when talking to me that one time the teacher said that, the idea of pi r square, he goes, no, cobblers are square, pi is around, and he decided to leave school. That was his joke about it. But he joined the Army, was a career soldier, self-taught himself to 2 years college. I state this because my dad was not dumb. He was very smart. He was just not educated well, mostly because of the dyslexia. But he self-taught himself to 2 years college. He loves science fiction. He can tell you about how fast the speed of light is. He can tell you what a photon is, what it does, but he'd spell it F-O-T-O-N. And I admire him for his tenacity to learn. And he was an influence in my life, of course, definitely an influence. It's kind of odd because I didn't know much about my dad until I started doing some of the same things he did. He withheld a lot of the information during the time he was in Vietnam. When I got back from basic training, he was more willing to talk to me about things in his life. And from that, it's kind of odd too, when I became a Scottish Rite Mason back in 2006, I get a call from him. And up to this point, I guess I'm getting into Freemasonry now, I did not know anything about my dad or anybody in my family being Masons. And looking back at my genealogy, the last known Mason that I knew of was during the Civil War. And that was the guy that I'm descended to, Larkin Chandler. His brother-in-law was the commander of his military regiment. He was his brother-in-law, that he was a master a master of a lodge in Kentucky, and that was the only one I knew of. So when I became a 32nd degree Mason, my dad called me up and congratulated me. And I'm like, well, what do you know about it, Dad? He goes, well, just to let you know, when I was over in Germany, I was in the DMLA. I'm like, you never told me this. He goes, no, I didn't. And I go, well, what happened? Why didn't you go into Masonry? He said, well, I ended up going to DMLA. I did like it, but a guy who was a 32nd degree Mason got me into it. And I really liked the guy. And when I got old enough to become a Mason, they told me, hey, you could be a Mason now. There's all this, it's going to take some brain work. And a lot of he was assuming it was going to be like quizzes, tests, paper, reading, and boning up in that way. And it scared him, and he ran away from it, never to be seen from again. And he just decided that this is way too much. I'm not going to do it. And I guess because he was so embarrassed by that, he never pursued it. He never even tried to investigate it. I'm like, Dad, what they were talking about was rope memorization. You were great at that. You could have done that. And he's like, no, let's jump to it. It's too late now. I'm like, it's never too late. Well, it is too late when you set your mind that it is. He passed away in 2021 during the time of COVID. But yeah, I remember that. One of the reasons why I bring this up early, and this is so early on in this, is that when we look at people, we can't look at them for who we think they are. We have to look beyond that. For example, for education purposes, he was not well educated, but he was very informed, very knowledgeable, very savvy. Much like one of my other heroes in my family was my uncle E.L. Payton. His actually first name was E.L. He was out of Arkansas. Didn't even finish high school. And yet he was the world leading authority on mosquitoes. He worked over at Smithsonian and over at Walter Reed. He got his start in the United States Army. He started off taking notes, and he ended up becoming the world leading authority on mosquitoes. And he used to take me to the back rooms of Smithsonian during that time, and he would take me over to that was the natural history, and he would take me over to American history, and I got to run around there, and maybe between my dad's stories and my uncle's exposing me to Smithsonian, my love for history probably grew from that, likely. But those were two of my heroes, and they were both not very well educated, but they were brilliant men. I tend to look at education now as an open door for opportunities and a way to structure people for developing experiences, because it's wisdom and judgment comes from vital experience. Education is just the means to open those doors. And the more education you have, the more opportunities to open those doors you get. And so it's all par for the course in becoming a better human being, in my opinion.
I like that. I've met a lot of people who they were really very intelligent, very intelligent people. And yet, certain kind of minor details, that ultimately add up to a lot, that it tends to kind of play, I hate to say against them, but in many ways it does. And yet there are still some very intelligent people out there. I always tell people that, you put a wrench in my hand, if you put a hammer or something like that in my hand, I'm going to rip my thumb off. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but it's going to happen. Right. And yet there are people out there who can, we have electricians, actual operative masons who get out there and they know how to mix mortar and pestle and cement and all that stuff and make things actually happen. So to hear you talk about, your dad and his experiences, especially, you talked about Vietnam. It's interesting that so many people were so tight-lipped about what happened over there. But I think if they had actually gotten the chance to talk about it, maybe a lot of people could have really benefited from that, and gained a lot more perspective. But so many people just refused to at the time. And, being able to relate, kind of like how after you got out of basic training, to be able to relate to him and for him to feel like he could relate to you, I think that's really important.
Yeah, I thought that was some kind of bond that happened there during that time. It was also about that time I got back from Fort Sill, and he said, "There's a movie out there in the theaters." It was Platoon. And he goes, "We should go see it." And I'm like, "Dad, you don't like anything Vietnam." He goes, "I know." And we watched it. And I found out later on it was based off of one of the military units that my dad was part of. I think it was the 25th Infantry Division. But he watched the whole movie. I watched him while he was watching the whole movie. I didn't really pay much attention to the movie itself. I was looking at him. It was a surreal kind of situation for me because my dad would never talk about these things. And then the movie was over, the credits went up, and then you see the white on the screen, and then he was like sitting there, and then after all the lights came on, he's just sitting there. I'm looking at him. He goes, "Let's go get drunk." It was the very first time I got drunk with my dad. And that's when he kind of opened up to me. And it was very surreal. Now, understand, as a child, my dad was the kind of person that he did move around the living room at nighttime in his sleep, almost like reliving Vietnam. But yeah, it's a very, very strange world to live in when you see things like that. I mean, of course, I'm an Army brat, and I spent time in myself, but we got to travel quite a bit because of that. And because of him, we ended up, my mom, when my dad married my mom, he didn't have any skill sets that were of any worth. And the only thing he knew that he was good at was the Army. He went in at 17, kind of like I did. And when he got out, he tried different things. He ended up meeting my mom while he was a bartender. And when he got married, he realized he needed to have something for a family. And the only thing he knew that he did well at was soldiering. And so he went back into the Army. Kind of odd. I mean, after Vietnam, he was a track master. He was a jungle expert. So we spent a lot of time. We spent time in the Fort Stewart as well, where the 24th Division was becoming mechanized from a light infantry. And he was a track master. And then also we spent a lot of time in Panama because he was a jungle expert. And that's where the jungle training school was. So I got to spend 6 years down in Panama. And my mom, who was here in the United States since she was 13, was from Panama herself. She came up here at 13 with my aunt, who married an American, my Uncle E.L. And she lived up here since a child. My dad teased that she was losing her Spanish. So when we got down to Panama, he sent her right up to her family's house up in the mountains of Panama in Veraguas, the province of Veraguas. And since it was summertime, all the kids got sent over there with her, and I didn't speak a lick of Spanish. Everybody in the area that I was in, now you have the Canal Zone. The Canal Zone is like living in the United States. It's amazing, especially back in the 1970s. If you think about it, they used the United States, they used the U.S. dollar as their currency. And yet the cost of living back then was about 1/10 of what it was here in the United States. So think about it. If you were a soldier, let's say if you were to make 1,000, just a straight number, 1,000 a month. When you get over to Panama, you're making the same amount of money because you're working for the United States. However, the cost of living is 1/10 that. So if you wanted to have a maid, it almost cost like $1 a day, $30 a month. You were able to afford that. So kids, when we were down there, we couldn't mow the lawn because somebody else was doing it. We couldn't do any kind of work. So we got to goof off a lot. And, it was pretty amazing being able to live in a place that seemed like the United States, step over a line and you're in a foreign country. But even more so for me, because my mom, who was Latina and from Panama, her family's from Panama, we got sent up to the mountains where my mom's family, actually has a ranch where they herd Brahma cattle, Brahmas, and the white Brahmas that you see in the rodeo.
Right.
Those are the kind that they had, and it was up in the mountains, and everybody rode horses. I mean, it was like going back into the 1800s in many ways. Thatch roof homes, outhouses, no running water, no electricity. The only person in town that actually had a vehicle was my mom's cousin named Bartolo. Bartolo would use his van to shuttle people from Panama City to Santiago de Veraguas. And so we also had family over in a city called David, which is near Costa Rica. So I learned to kill and clean my own food, eggs, didn't ride horses, but more especially, they sent me to school with my cousins, and I didn't understand any Spanish. I had to learn just by being immersed in it, which is kind of like how my family did things. My dad learned how to swim by being thrown in the Ohio River, and he ended up being a very exceptional swimmer. As a result of that, I guess my family on my dad's side comes from the Appalachian over eastern Kentucky, and that's how they just did things, I guess. But then my mom's side is Latina. I guess the family migrated over from Spain to Colombia, moved over to Panama when it was part of the same country. And I guess in the early 1900s, they got the freedom from Colombia. So I got to learn a lot. I got to learn Spanish. I used to speak fluent Spanish. It's pretty rough right now, but it was a time when I could speak it fluently. It's pretty amazing to be able to live in many different worlds all at once.
I can see that, yeah. And especially, so that's probably one thing that I actually neglected to mention and I totally left out. You're the liaison between the Grand Lodge of Virginia and the Grand Lodge of Panama. Is that right?
Yes, I am actually. Or as they say it, let me see if I can still do this. El gran representante de la Gran Logia de Panama, cerca la Gran Logia de Virginia.
That's it. Perfect. That sounds good to me.
So, I mean, yeah, it's a privilege, and I'm grateful for the Grand Master and the Grand Lodge of Virginia for allowing me that honor. But yeah, it's nice that I have that kind of connection as well. Very interesting.
I think so.
Yeah.
So what led you to Freemasonry? We all have some kind of path, some kind of aha moment that kind of takes us there. What was it for you? Yeah, after my ETS out back in the early 1990s, I did multiple things. I was over in California. The recession hit pretty hard over there. I was sleeping on a couch, paying $400 a month for it, because I was, everybody was struggling over there. But I was writing poetry. Ended up becoming published. But I ended up winning an award over here, and I was flown into D.C. to participate in 1993 on this convention of poets. And essentially, I won some accolades over that, and I got to, as because I won as some of the top poets in 1993, and one of the guest poet laureates was John Denver. And I sat at the table with him during dinner time, and got to speak with him for the night. It was pretty interesting. But while I was here, I was offered a job teaching CPR and first aid and being a business safety consultant. And I took the job, called my family back in California, and told them, pack my stuff up. I'll pick it up later. Never went back to California.
I ended up staying in Virginia, and my family eventually made their way to Virginia as well. Like I said, the recession was pretty bad over there during the 1990s. So we ended up coming back from California to Virginia, and I've been here since. I ended up in the 90s working for different groups. Ended up working as a gas station manager, food retail as well. As a manager, ended up running Baron Cameron Mobile for a while, which was right in between Mobile's headquarters and their World Training Center. So there was a lot of dignitaries went back and forth. I did that for a while as well too. But I came here in 1990s. I was doing DJing at nighttime, which is kind of strange. It's a different life from what I'm doing now. But during this much of the 90s, I was a DJ thanks to one of my old roommates, Dion Alexander. Still a dear friend of mine. He's family. My kids, that's Uncle Dion to my kids. But I came here to Fredericksburg because I met a lady, a wonderful, beautiful woman, Holly. And we ended up, this was her home, so it became my home, Fredericksburg. And I ended up getting a job with CVS as a store manager. And I met this guy who was interested in me. We would just talk, and we had, and he kept coming back, and we kept talking. And the next thing I know, for about a year there, I would, on Wednesdays, when we got the load at 2:00 in the morning, I'd work that load, and then I would talk with him and would have lunch with him. And one day, after about a year of this, I looked down at his finger, and I finally noticed I must be dense. I saw that ring on his finger after a year, and I asked him what it was about. And I said, well, what is that? And I started explaining to me what masonry was. And I'm like, so how do you become a mason? And he goes, you know how long I've been trying to get you to say something like that? It's been about a year now. His name was Ira Doug Jones. He was an Ohio Mason, but he was in Akka Shrine. And he introduced me to Sandy Campbell, who became my two signers. And Sandy kind of disappeared after that, but Ira was the one that got me involved. And he was the one that kind of gave me my initial guidance. He came over, he said Fredericksburg was the closest lodge, so he was here, had my first reading, and then my second reading happened. He was there to, him and Sandy were there to talk on my behalf, and I think it was 3 days later he died. And I didn't see Sandy much after that. And so I was just approved to become a Mason. Didn't know anybody. Ira passed away, and I was trying to figure out who I was, what it was that I was supposed to know about this. One thing I did remember from him, he said that you'll have time to reflect on who you are. You should do such. And I did. And then as I was being initiated, there's a part where a prayer is supposed to be offered, whether it's in your head or audibly. And I guess I did an audible one and caught people off guard, because I guess most people don't do that, but I did. And I found out later on that a guy by the name of Rudy Griffiths chose to coach me. And Rudy became my world at that point, because I didn't know anybody else. Rudy, he was amazing. Rudy probably, during the time, all the time that he's been here, he's the past master of Fredericksburg Lodge. I believe it was in 1974, I think it was. He had coached many, many Masons. But the unique thing about Rudy is that many, if not most, of the people that he coached became coaches themselves and coached other Masons. he was very good at it. He would, especially with me, I had a flair to speak real fast, like most Latinos. And I would speak real fast, and he's like, "What's that?" He's like, "Slow down, emphasize your words. Everything has meaning. Don't say say a. Don't say the, say the." And he taught me to slow down and speak properly with more emphasizing. I learned that even in life, and I still do it every once in a while when I'm forgetful, but I try to slow down myself. Words have meaning. Words have power, have purpose. And you should emphasize each and every word when you can. And I think even in my Masonic studies, that's something that I also focus great deal on. Emphasize every single word, slow down. Other past masters used to say, slow is smooth, and smooth is fast. So basically, when we do the things we do, I try to slow down and emphasize each and every word, emphasize each and every thing I do. I don't try to be military about things, but I try to be methodical about it. I try to emphasize the things I do when I'm doing them. That's what I learned. And Rudy became, from Rudy, I had the opportunity to meet all the other brothers in Masonry. Now, with the way he did it, you don't get to meet anybody until you become a Master Mason. But as I went through the degrees, I got to meet other people. And my world opened up greatly once I became a Master Mason. And it was an amazing experience. I think that there's a lot of semblance of the military camaraderie, but it goes beyond that as well, because we're talking about people from all fields of human endeavor, all classes and social statuses, all coming together here where we meet on the level, and that means it's equals, and we treat each other as equals. That was the one thing that I found most profound about Masonry. That's when my journey began in this, our gentle craft.
I like that. First off, I didn't even know that you were a DJ. That's actually something that's really neat. This is one of the things that I really appreciate about this podcast in particular, right? Is that first off, some of these guys, they're tight-lipped about who they are, but then suddenly they open up and you go, I didn't know that about you, and other people don't either. And suddenly, there's this newfound sense of appreciation for that person. Like you went to California. You came from California and then you came here. So I was born in Washington State. I was a Navy brat myself. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up doing the whole rigmarole, moving to Guam, all of that stuff going on. I ended up here, and then I moved to Arizona for work, and I was working in law enforcement at the time as well. So I understand and I appreciate that sense of camaraderie, and coming back here, I found a newfound sense of it. And to hear about Ira, brother Ira, that's profound, from the seeds of, from the seeds of the ashes, I guess you could say, sprout something anew. And to think that, and it's funny because so many people, one thing that I appreciate about Freemasonry is that it builds up the man, right? You could join the Rotary, the Lions, all these other fun little clubs that do some kind of philanthropic thing, but Masonry itself has this tendency of building up the man, so that when he goes out into the world, he can be the best force for good that he can be, right? And so many people say, I'm just one man. Well, Masonry kind of reminds you, you are not just one man. You are one man who can make a difference. Yeah. We look at George Washington. We look at Dwight Eisenhower. Sure, those guys are great. But locally here, right? You look at just Rudy Griffith himself, right? Brother Rudy, how many people owe their careers in the craft to him? How many people owe their careers in the craft to Brother Ira? How many owe it to you? Because of everything that you've done. Yeah.
Well, Masonry is a stewardship. We all take something of it while we have it and make good use of it. And the point is, and the most important part is, as a stewardship, you're supposed to pass it on to the next generation. We don't flourish if we covet and hold on to it. It's something that we pass on to the next generation. We should never feel that, oh, he's taking over for this. You should be happy about that, because when you lay down your working tools, somebody's got to take over. One of the things that I tried to initiate when I was here was to sit down and have a round table where we just pick topics and talk. And one of the things I try to do is I pass on my knowledge to the newer brothers, and to encourage other older brothers to do the same, because we shouldn't have to relearn everything because we held on to it and didn't want anybody else to know about it. It's important to pass it on. It's a stewardship. As for the other social organizations in our communities, it's one thing. I mean, they do noble pursuits, every single one of them. But the difference between joining a club, and Masons have to understand this, you have to ask yourself, do I want to join a club, or do I want to be part of a way of life? And that's what Masonry is. It's so much more. People don't understand that, but you take on an obligation to try to live by higher standards. It's not easy. You don't always achieve it, but it's the pursuit that matters. And so long as you're trying is what's most important. We make mistakes, but
we own them.
We're faltered. I mean, we're fragile and frail people, but it's the attempt, the continuous attempt, is what matters, to do better, to do good, and to learn. And education is important. Learning is very important. Making yourself more is important. And if we don't do these things, we fail completely. And community fails because our community is only as good as the people that's in it. For example, I mean, I will tell you all about the wonderful things I did as a kid, but once my parents got divorced, it was a pretty bad divorce. My mom came back to the United States, and she had no job skills. I lived in projects. I lived in the Latino community, where among people who were refugees from other countries, and even illegals for that matter. I lived in Black communities where there was like the projects. I mean, probably the worst part of my life was during that time. My mom had no job skills. My very first job was at the very McDonald's that she worked at. Those were harder times. They were worse times. But, people don't realize that in the place that I was living, there was a park in the back where you heard people being raped, even murdered. And that was probably the lowest part of my life, but I learned something great from it. We should never want to be somebody else or wish that we had something else, because everything, I remember those days. And I learned that the only way that we can elevate ourselves is by advancing ourselves and educating ourselves, learning more, trying to do more. And my kids never had to know anything about being hungry. They never had to eat the government cheese. They never had to deal with peanut butter. They had oil on top that you had to mix it back in, and it tore up the bread. I guess those people who lived in poverty knows what that means. But, I've always believed that if you leave the place better than you had it, if you leave the world better than you had it, then you've done your part. And that goes the same with Masonry in this lodge. But those are blessings in disguise for me, because the reason why I was able to get out of that was because of I got in trouble with my stepfather and told my dad I was in trouble. Ended up back in California with him. And shortly thereafter, I ended up going into the Army. That changed my life significantly. I was on the way to ruins if it hadn't been for going into the Army. But the thing is, coming back here, I had done many different things. I actually, in addition to working for the, being a DJ part-time, working different jobs, I also worked for the International Association of Chiefs of Police, where I was one of the people helping organize the training sessions, the training activities for police all over the United States and the world, where they would have things like community-oriented policing, managing criminal investigations, coursework like that. And I was busy helping put together those programs on the logistics sides of it, and got to learn a great deal about that too. But one of the reasons, times I was up there, I started sending packages to my uncle down here in Petersburg. He was a police sergeant down here, and I would send him opportunities to participate in some of these programs. And he always rejected it. Years later, we were talking, I mentioned, did you ever get something like that? He goes, yeah, somebody kept sending this. I didn't know who it was, didn't know why that was. I just kept throwing it away. I go, Uncle Jerry, that was me. And he never knew it.
That's rich.
Yeah. But it was, the thing is that hardships like that, I mean, the thing is, it's the opportunity to grow, and it's what you do with it. It's even in masonry. I used to teach my Masonic students, there's no such thing as a great Mason. And the reason why that is because we're all given the exact same lessons, the exact same tools. It's what we do with it. So there's no such thing as a great Mason, only a good Mason that becomes a great man. And the beautiful thing about Masonry, its 400-year history and its 4,000-year heritage, and I say 400, not 300, because I include the old Gothic constitutions, because that's all part of our story. But throughout all that time, Masons have been leaders in all fields of human endeavor. And it's an amazing thing to see when you look at all the names. Yeah, we get attacked often about being Satan worshipers. We get attacked a lot about having secrets. But those secrets were mostly modes of identification, but primarily it was a way to develop trust between two strangers. I give you a secret, and if you hold on to that secret and keep it, I give you another secret. It bridges a relationship that bonds you to brothers.
I like that. So usually whatever I tell people is, you remember when you were playing around as kids and you had the secret club with the secret tree house and the secret handshake and what's the secret password or you're not getting in? Well, that's basically us, but we grew up, right? And, we tried to actually stay relevant in terms of being good people. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what I usually tell people, and usually they go, oh, yeah, right, whatever, right? I don't think that some people will ever break away from that sense of skepticism. But you just to hear a lot of your stories, and I appreciate that. So one thing that always inspired me was two things really, right? From you directly was your motto for the year, right? That you were master, which was never on borrowed honor. And I kind of tend to keep that going. At least in my mind, I have it somewhere on my phone actually, where it was like this little, it wasn't a business card, but you had, I don't know if that was your pin for the year or a coin or whatever logo.
I had it as a pin. I also had a card, but that was my pin, my lapel pin for that year. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Never on borrowed honor. And people said that wasn't wasn't anything Masonic about it. I'm like, sure it was. And especially for Fredericksburg Lodge with its history that goes back all the way to 1752, and probably even before. But the idea here is that we talk about our past as Masons. We talk about the rich history that we have, but what are we doing now to perpetuate it? And especially here in Fredericksburg, where we have George Washington's Mother Lodge. I mean, there's not one Mason here that's not an expert on George Washington because of it. It's an amazing legacy to have, a heritage to have, and we have it, and it's a stewardship that we're supposed to hold for the rest of Masonry in the world. It's not ours, it belongs to everybody. But even here, where we have all the Revolutionary War generals and leaders, George Washington casts a great shadow over them. We don't talk much about the other people, which we in the 21st century, we're beginning to do so even better now. But back then, we talked mostly about George Washington. But the thing is that with all the greatness that this lodge has achieved in its past, what do we do now to perpetuate that? And the answer is every Mason in this lodge and in every lodge should find ways to do great things in little ways. And sometimes it's just to be there to support your brother. And sometimes just to be there to support the degree work. We had one brother who the only thing he wanted to do, because I mean, he had some learning problems, but he got through the training, became a master mason. It was a struggle, but he did it. And the only thing he wanted to do was to make sure that he had some kind of job where he can just like empty the trash, clean out the kitchen, just something to show that he participated in something greater than himself. And that's the important thing, because when you participate in something greater than yourself, you improve the world in small ways. I always tell people when they ask about Freemasonry, well, what is that? I go, well, it's basically taking the tools of the ancient stonemasons and turning them inwards in symbolic ways to build that temple within yourself. But what you don't realize is when you help other people, you're helping yourself. It's not just a good feeling, but you're making their lot in life better. And you can do that even when you don't have money. It's the sweat of your brow. I mean, there's a reason why we do more in charity than any other organization in the world. And the thing is that many of them are children. But the thing is that in helping others, we make the world better. And I think that's what I hope to take. And it's not necessarily always I think people misunderstand us because they think, oh, you're a religion. Oh, you're trying to control the world. Well, we can't even control a fish fry, let alone the world. But what we do learn is that if you learn to fix yourself, you become a better man, a better husband, a better father. And when you become so confident in your convictions, other people begin to be inspired by you. And I think that's why we have leaders in all fields of human endeavor throughout in every field of human endeavor. We have leaders from military to government to medicine to theater to music to science. It's amazing, the names. If you really want to know an organization, look at its members, the famous members. Look at the people. You have like George Washington. You have Blackjack Pershing. You have Brad Paisley. You have the Mayo brothers, the Ringley brothers. You have the leaders of the Alamo. And you got to ask yourself, are these the kind of people that I would see as someone who has done something significant? Or are they people of good character? And if you think so, well, maybe you got an idea of who we are. That's the best way to do it, not by what you think we do, but by looking at the famous people that you do know of and whether or not they are the kind of people you'd like to be like.
And I agree with that. Burl Ives, great example. If I remember correctly, the guy who founded St. Jude's Hospital for Children, right, for cancer.
Yeah.
Thomas. Danny Thomas.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he was actually when he did start St. Jude's, and what happened was, I think this, as the story goes, I believe he had a child that he brought over to a Shriners Hospital, and he was willing to pay to have them take care of that child. And they said, no, we don't pay here. And he thought that was amazing. And he learned how they did things. He became a Mason. He became a Shriner. And I believe that he took some of the things he learned from the Shriners hospitals on how to not charge people. And he took a bit of that and integrated that into St. Jude's.
Right.
So yeah, there is a connection. There is a Masonic connection with St. Jude's, and they do wonderful, amazing work. Like the Shriners Hospitals, they deal with cleft lip, orthopedic, burn, and they're very good at what they do. But the thing is, St. Jude's take care of kids who have cancer and a lot of terminal illnesses, and they or potentially terminal illnesses, and they do what they can for them. The world's a better place because of these institutions, and it's nice to see that we have a part of that. One of the things that fascinates me about Masonry is the English Civil War in the 1600s. People don't realize that there was a lot of Masons involved in that, but some of the people who got their degrees during that war eventually became the charter members of the Royal Society. And they talk about how they were the ones that opened up the idea of public schools. They were the ones that opened up the idea of science. They put out grant money to do some of the Columbian experiments where you would take fruits or items that you grow from other parts of the world, bring it to the Americas and see if you can grow it. And matter of fact, the story about the mutiny on the Bounty, the reason why Captain Bligh was out there was because the Royal Society had a grant to bring back breadfruit from the Pacific to see if they can grow it over here. And he was out to get the money that grant offered. But the Royal Society were the ones that brought science, a lot of the science to the world, brought a lot of the public school idea to the world. And the charter members were Masons. And many of them got their degrees during the English Civil War. Most people don't know that.
Wow. And they actually gave us a lot of legitimacy later on as well.
The point is that those people that we do know have done significant work. Benjamin Franklin came up with the idea of the fire stations. So there's a lot of people who had a lot of impact on society that were Masons that we just don't know about. It's a wonderful thing to be part of a legacy like that.
Right.
And,
yeah. And I think that's, you're right. When you talked about how everybody gets the same tools to make that work. And if you take those tools and you really internalize them, whether you're the first degree or the 33rd degree, you still have the same capabilities to get the job done and make improvements in yourself.
Yeah.
So, I remember for a brief time, I had a kind of a correctional setting for a job. Mm-hmm. And I remember sitting there, I remember thinking, how do I treat these people? How do I meet them on the level? But at the same time, I have to be in charge of them, right? So it was kind of weird because there were plenty of moments where, sure, all right, I'm the boss, I'm in charge, you're going to do what I say that I need you to do. And they never fought me on any of that, right? Because if I had to be that way, they knew that I wasn't, now's not the time for that. Yeah. But if they sat there, imagine, sitting there on the phone with the cafeteria on behalf of a rapist or a murderer, saying, hey, my guy didn't get, this thing on his, on his food tray. Can we fix that? Mm-hmm. So it was kind of a weird moment, but that was profound. That was a profound influence for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, sometimes, in fact, I've been kind of mulling this over lately. You know, you talked about how, you know, you don't ever want to be, you never want to trade places with people, right? And so many people, they lament at their situations. And probably earlier this week, I sat there thinking about, you know, how loudly would the Stones have screamed had we been able to hear them when Michelangelo was chipping away at David? We look at David now and we think that he's amazing, right? But you know, if we could hear the Stones at the time, can you imagine just how agonizing that would be?
Yeah.
Yeah. And yet, you know, it's produced works that have become the admiration of every age. You know, yeah. we look at that within ourselves and it's like, yeah, we call it the gentle craft, but there's not really anything that's genuinely gentle about it. You know, there's nothing gentle about facing yourself in the mirror.
This is an interesting way of looking at it. I have to mull that one over, but that's I do like that, and it's true. It's there's great labor in masonry. It's more subtle to the eyes of people who are not there, but for those who actually apply their obligations and to lift up their working tools and labor on those things that make us masons, you're absolutely right. It's good hard work, and the pleasure is more in the contributions and how you elevate others and working on yourself. And that, like I said, that will always be something that we should strive to pursue as masons. It will make the world better when we work on ourselves.
Yeah. I agree with you on that one. And speaking, so, you know, we've talked a lot about working on ourselves and people that meant something to us. Who were your Masonic heroes?
Huh.
Everybody has them.
Yeah. You know? Interesting enough, when we talked about Rudy, who got me started, Ira, who got me through the door. I have many heroes. I have a board of directors. They don't know they're on that, and that's something that Andy Andrews, who he does a lot of public speaking roles. He brought that up, and I used to listen to that. But he's right. There's people around you that you say, you're on my board of directors. You're on my board of directors, and the thing is, for the things that they do, great. And there's many of them. For me, for example, I have people like, of course, the guy who got me involved more in history and got me to go back to school and get my academic pedigrees in history and such, was Professor John Pierce. But then there was also people like Brother John Pierce, I should say, who was the director of the James Rowe Memorial Library Museum prior to Scott Harris, who is right now, who's also retiring now. Then there was also Right Worshipful Bill Thomas, who was always there he was very gracious about giving me opportunities to shine once I had that background in history, that academic background in history. Then there was, of course, those people who gave me other opportunities. I would tell you right now, for the ability to speak, there's people like Brother Bob Melvin and Bill Searcy. They're amazing communicating to people and conveying their points. The exemplar for being a Mason, in my opinion, is Worshipful Brother Sandy Mackey. He is, I was his senior warden when he was master. He didn't have any kind of major flares in his time as master, but he took care of the quiet things, the little things that were the important things, like the upkeep of the lodge. He did a lot of that during his time. And you reported that during the time I was master, we had the earthquake. 3 days later, we had a hurricane, and we were hoping that the building would stay together. It's an old building. It's a historic building, but it is, as an old and historic building, it was also susceptible to earthquakes and hurricanes, especially as fragile as it was at the time. But I truly believe that the work that Sandy did as master, the quiet things that he did that wasn't so pomp and flair and a lot of attention, the things that he initiated as master were the things that I believe kept that building standing. I do believe that. He is a brother that everybody loves because he sits there, he listens, and when he speaks with great thought. And I think that he's an amazing brother to have around and listen to. I try to emulate him, not very successful at times, but I do try my best to emulate that. There are others, of course, and I know they're going to get back at me. I've had brothers like that I've learned a great deal from. For example, Jeff Sinange was a brother that when he did a total assessment of the lodge, who was paying what, how much the bills were that the lodge had to pay, found out that we were in a deficit. He, with Sandy, myself, and him, we put a PowerPoint together looking at all the expenses. And we restructured everything on how everything got paid, how much rent everybody paid, how much we charge a day for the lodge. It turned out to be $50 a day with all the expenses. But we also had to raise dues, and we almost doubled it in 2009. But the amazing thing about that was normally everybody complains whenever you have to raise any kind of money for, dues or money that goes to the Grand Lodge, and people will complain that you have to pay out more money. But the thing is, what he did is he laid it all out for everybody, the brothers. And he had multiple meetings where he showed this PowerPoint on what we were going to have to pay the money on and what it would cost. And I think we raised it from 87 to 155 that year. And it took place a couple years later, but when we showed it multiple times, and by the time it came to a vote, only one person objected to it. And the reason why they objected is because they never went to any of the meetings. And everybody else saw the wisdom in it. That was profound. The way that, I learned a lot about that. I learned also from Sandy that you don't say this door closed. You try to find ways to say, please use the other door. And that's how we should do things in life. We don't shut people down. Now, do I do that? I strive not to, but I'm trying to learn to do it this way now because it's the right way to do it. But things like that, how you can find ways to bridge relationship with people, maybe not shutting them down, but redirecting. And I think if I'm doing anything as a Mason that I strive for, it's that. Do I shut people down? There has been times where that got me in trouble, even though my intentions have been, I'd like to think, noble. But by doing that, I upset someone. I'm trying to learn to do it the other way now. It's harder when you're with the ones you love the most because they're the ones that touch your emotions the most. And so that's the work in progress as well for me. But it's not beyond my sight that I must do these things. And I think Masonry does that to me. It makes me look at myself more. That ring points towards myself when I wear it, that square and compass, because it's reminding me of my ill qualities that I have to work on. And it's if you ever say that you got it, you're done, you got it all figured out, you probably better go and review it again. It's a lifelong lesson. It's a perpetual lesson. And when you're building that temple within, be sure that you're squaring all your actions on there, because that you're using your working tools properly. Because if you think you're done with it, you maybe didn't do it right. I would say.
No, you didn't, right? So And see, and those are interesting stories that I didn't even hear, I didn't know about and I didn't hear about. In fact, I think it's with that conversation that I had with Brother Ethan in a previous episode, how I said that, there are brothers who, when you watch them, suddenly you start to kind of kick yourself and you go, man, why didn't I think of that? It seemed so apparent as soon as he did it or he pointed it out, but I couldn't have thought of that. I mean, wow, man, I'm impressed with him, and it's always nice to see that.
Let me say one more thing here. Sure. Also, to the other people I would have to say is Worshipper Tony Rudder, who gave me an opportunity to come into line. I know he had help with a lot of counsel. I would like to think good counsel, maybe not so much now for other people, but for me, I thought, I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve as master of this lodge. Tony gave me that opportunity. Then there was also Worshipper Rick Day, who gave me the opportunity to do more. The Fredericksburg Education Program, which we got started early back in 2006, was what got me started with opportunities at Grand Lodge as well. It was because of him. He realized, I think I would like to say he realized that as for young Masons, and there's a segue here, to put a young Mason in charge, a brand new Mason, very young, put him in charge of something, give them the complete support of the past masters where they can go and ask them of their experience and their knowledge, and then create something and be in charge of it and to make it happen. That really grows you because you're learning everything as you're doing it. But his mentality, I believe, was if a brand new Mason could learn and do it, then anybody can do it. So when those programs came out, I like to think they were successful, and I like to think that they were easy to learn, because if a young Mason can make it happen, then any new Mason can make it happen, and just learning it, let alone putting it together. I say that because you mentioned Ethan. Ethan Burgess is a wonderful brand new brother. He's got a wonderful, I believe he's got a wonderful journey ahead of him. He's going to be a wonderful leader in this lodge. There's a lot, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of wonderful brothers in Fredericksburg who's got a bright future. But I got a chance, an opportunity to see him in action. He was given the opportunity as a brand new Mason to do the Lafayette commemoration for Fredericksburg, and he's doing a lot of wonderful work now. That's a brother that is shining in his opportunities, and he should be commended for it. So I wanted to make sure to note that. And I really hope that he and the other new Masons coming in find their opportunities to shine, because it's not for them. It is for them in the sense that it helps grow them and gives them more experience. I listened to his podcast, and he talks about his life here. There are brothers who have been far more worldly than he is, but it sounds like he's taking the opportunity to learn from those things, because those might be his more weaker parts, but he's learning from them. He's actually listening to them. And I listened to him. That's what he was saying. And experience is not just what you learn for yourself. It's the things that other people have done that you can learn from them. Kind of like the idea of not putting your finger. I can either put my finger in a electric socket and jolt myself, but if someone tells me don't do it because it's going to hurt, I might not do it just because of that. Of course, doing it is the best experience of all, because you're never going to do it again once you get jolted. But I can learn from somebody else's mistake too, and I can learn from the things that they did that was successful. You emulate success, and it sounds like Ethan does a great deal of that. And I think you do that too, my brother. I think that
thank you.
There's a lot of. I am hopeful for the young Masons that we have in our lodge, because they are looking to take such opportunities to grow and to take positions which will make them future leaders. And when I say leaders, I'm talking about steward leadership, not the kind where you're dictating to people and you're coveting things to control. I'm talking about the people who uh, lead from the front, that takes the opportunity to bring people with you. One of the things we tried to teach our brothers, I've always tried to teach, was that if you can't look a brother in the eye and tell them I love you like they're actually one of your siblings and actually mean it, then chances are you're in the wrong organization. We have all these obligations which balance us, and all these commonalities within Masonry that should bind us. We should be that much closer because of it. But the idea is to help lift each other up, and in doing so, we help lift up the world as well, because, it says that we're supposed to help each other. And the downside is the world thinks that helping each other means helping each other to the exclusion of them, which is not true. But it's in helping them, all of us together can help the world in our own individual ways. It's like our circles are all different. And in those ways, we can help lift other people. And when we help each other, we help others beyond that they help. As you said, that we touch other people's lives. Well, by helping you, I help you help others, as well as I help myself in helping you, because I learn. I'll tell you what, the brother who's been here who's been a Mason for many, many years and has all these accolades, and if they don't listen to the new guys who have their own personal experiences and can learn from those, they're missing the point. You're a student even when you're a master. I always said that the master of a lodge is the biggest steward in the lodge. If you can't serve them from the kitchen, and I'm not saying that they exclusively stewards, but the idea of serving people in a very physical manner like that. If you can't serve them from the kitchen, don't bother serving them from the east, because it's a stewardship, and the master is the biggest steward in the lodge. You are there to take care of all the members and your community, and even when people come in, you're supposed to be the host for them. You're the face of the lodge, but you're also supposed to be serving them. There's a lot of good brothers that come in here, and they believe that I've watched some of the masters, they wait till everybody else eats, and then they go themselves and eat. And that's just an aspect of that. Also take care of everybody before you take care of yourself. That is the purpose of the master, is to, when you're voted in, you're given a great opportunity to do great many things. It's what you do with it. And the question is, do you do it to serve yourself or serve others? The reason why George Washington is considered the quintessential Mason is because twice he gave up absolute power. That's a very Masonic lesson, to take the things that people give you, the authority, and utilize it to the best for everyone, and to hand it off and give it over. And George Washington did that twice. He did it when he gave up his sword to Congress as commander-in-chief, and he did that when he stepped away from the presidency, which he could have done for many terms later. Back then, there was no limitation on terms. He didn't even want to do a second term, but he felt he had to in order to keep the peace from people. When you're in a new country, there's a lot of problems. Everybody thinks that maybe they had the better idea. He was the one that was trying to keep the peace and trying to smooth it over so that we can develop a system that would go on. And so he did a second term, but he walked away from it after that. And I tell people that the nation that George Washington fought against, when you go to their Grand Lodge and you look at their stained glass windows of some of the most significant Masons in history, George Washington is among them. And, Grand Lodges throughout the world have lodges that are named after George Washington as a result. He elevated himself by doing such from a national hero to an international icon because he walked away from power. He's known as the American Cincinnatus because the idea of the Roman general Cincinnatus. He also walked away from power. That was the first time in known history that someone did that. George Washington was the second. But yeah, so those are things that I learned as a Mason. But I think also your heroes can be people that come in after you, can be your own students, can be your own, the people you're supposed to be mentoring yourself. I've learned a lot from my own, and I'm blessed to know it. So there was many people who taught me as a young Mason, but as a more seasoned brother, I think that there were brothers brand new that I learned a great deal from as well, and I cherish that.
And I think it's worth cherishing. Absolutely. Humility, I think, is probably one of the biggest lessons that we should be reminded of. Actually, you could make the argument that it's probably one of the first that we're taught in Masonry. And that's one thing that I always appreciated about our fine craft, our institution, is that we actually do try to remain humble, 9 times out of 10. And I think that kind of segues into the next question. Mm-hmm. How do you live it today? The lessons that you've learned within Freemasonry.
Well, I think that I think what happens is everything nowadays I take to the world. For example, I work for the. I have 2 jobs. I work for Feed More, where I am the field site coordinator for 2 counties, taking care of the volunteers and clients over there. And I am also the superintendent of the James Monroe Birthplace Park and Museum, or we'll probably be recoining that, but basically President James Monroe's birthplace. I'm the superintendent there. Everything that I do nowadays, and from my early start as a Mason, I begin to realize this. We talk about the 3 pillars of wisdom, strength, and beauty. And you would think that that's something that we do within the lodge, and we apply that to ourselves in the lodge. I realize that it goes beyond that. For example, whenever I build a website, I use wisdom, strength, the pillars of wisdom, strength, and beauty, in the sense that wisdom, use common sense in building a website. Strength, the strength of your skills or your talents. And beauty, make sure it's aesthetically pleasing, that the website looks good. Whenever I do something with running or administrating a site, I make sure that the site looks good, aesthetically pleasing. That's beauty. I make sure that we're following proper regulations and rules that are dictated either by the governments, the different various governments, local, federal, and state, or by within your own organization, like the James Monroe Memorial Foundation, their rules and what they dictate to me, or that would be the pillar of wisdom, because you're using, the judgment, and then strength, the strength of my skill sets, or those that are around me, apply those and make sure it's not just me. I mean, the one thing I do is I get people I got people who have all kinds of talents and skill sets and education. I have people who are PhDs that are over there, and then I have people who have been doing things for many, many, many years and have accumulated great experience at that very thing, and they all make the world better for me over there at the birthplace. So I think that I apply wisdom, strength, and beauty in all the things I do now. I attempt to. I think that that's one of the biggest things I try to do, because I think that it creates a balance of the things that are pleasing and necessary in all the things that we do, not just as Masons, but as human beings.
I like that. Yeah. It's funny because, when I first became a Master Mason, Brother Chris Decker, actually, he and I, spoke on the phone, and that's actually one of the things that he said. He said, sometimes you have to be the pillar of wisdom. Sometimes you have to be the pillar of strength. Sometimes it's beauty, and, sometimes it's all at once, sometimes it's everything, everywhere, and, but as long as you're incorporating that, it's a good way, it's a good starting block at the minimum to, I guess, not just accomplish the mission, but to make sure it's done well, to live the values that Freemasonry has. So I can respect that. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing I think I must learn as a Mason also, and I try to do so, is and it's a work in progress with me too, is to keep that door open, especially with the people that you don't agree with so much. And there can be people that you disagree with for direction or where the lodge should go. It could be the politics. It could be even personal. But leaving a door open is the work in progress that I'm trying to do. There are many brothers who you might disagree with or may disagree with you. But the amazing thing is that we all took the same obligations, and we should strive to always find ways to bridge relationships, even when we disagree. I think that's the amazing thing about Masonry too. And I mean, there's, of course, you can find that in other venues. Don't get me wrong. I don't dismiss my faith and my religion and my belief in God. Those are very noble pursuits. Masonry is not a religion. It doesn't offer salvation, and there is no dogma. If you want a relationship with God, go to church. If you want a relationship with man while you're here on this earth, Masonry is a good way to explore that. But it's not the only thing. Not everybody can be a Mason, but it is something that I chose. And I'm grateful for it. But the thing is that learning to bridge relationships is the most important thing, I think. And that starts with communications and learning more about yourself, learning about your own ill qualities. A lot of times, for all of us, the biggest obstacle to bridging relationships is yourself. And the more I begin to understand my lessons, the more I begin to realize I have to work on myself. I can't work on other people. I can't work on their ashlar. That's for them to do. That's the ill qualities that other people have, the things that wedges between people. You can do your part, but don't do other people's part. That's when you exacerbate the problem, is when you try to fix other people. And do I do that? Sure. I'm trying my best not to. But I think the biggest lesson for Masonry is when you learn to fix yourself, work on yourself and be open-minded about the other person. You may not have a relationship with them. You might not even get to talk with them much, but you can always have an affection and understanding, a better understanding of them if you keep your mind open and your heart open. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons I learned about Masonry. Every brother who's ever became a part of the craft will always have a place in my heart and an open door, regardless. And I think for the world too, I think that we disagree about how this world should be ran. All of us, even in America, here in America, we have political arguments all the time. But I think that if we would just take the time to look and understand the next person over and maybe see how their ashlar looks and compare those things that are similar, maybe, just maybe, we can make the world a little bit better even when we disagree. We don't have to be so harsh with each other. I wish that was the case. Did I do it? Sure. And many things, but over time, I think maybe it also is getting older, and maybe the brothers that have been around me have made a major impact on that. And I think that I'm hoping that I'm exemplifying it better as the years go. I would really like to think that I do.
I like that. Yeah. In fact, it's funny that, you mentioned the how you wear your ring, right? You wear it points in, right? So that it reminds you, you know, of what you need to work on. It's funny because I always wear mine points out, right? So, you know, anybody who sees it can show it. And that's more of a, for me, it's actually kind of a reminder, right? Of sitting there going, okay, you know, if you're going to wear this, then, you know, you need to live it, right? So, you know, and it's funny that we both, it's still the same message and yet for completely different
You want to know the truth?
What's that?
There is no wrong answer to that.
Never is.
Yeah, Masons talk about that. Well, should you have your ring and facing towards you or towards other people? And people go, I do it to other people so they can, you know, and so they can see it and they can ask questions about it. Or I hold it to myself so, you know, to hold myself accountable. There is no wrong answer.
No.
The thing is that when you touch people and you share something that is special to you, like maybe it's wearing the ring outwards so that people can ask you about it so you can share with them how you think about it. You're opening up an awareness to them. There are people out there who don't even know that a Shriner, they talk about how bad Masons are, but then when you look at Shriners, they praise them, talk about how wonderful people they are, how they're helping so many people, not knowing once that every single Shriner is a Mason.
That's right. It has to be a Mason.
So the thing is that every time we educate and open the light of Masonry to the world, we make, and we do it with our passion. We make the world better because we open up an awareness to them. And so there's no wrong answer to that. I think there's a lot of Masons out there that think that there are set ways to do things and that there's no other way of doing things. Entirely false. A good example of that is some people may disagree about how a master of a lodge may run it because they would never do it that way. That doesn't mean it's wrong. That just means that he's not doing it the way you did it. And in the end, if you leave the lodge in a better condition or equal condition than you got it, then you're successful. As for how successful you are, you're never going to know that. That's something that 50 years, 100 years later, when people go back and look at everything and how everything turned out, they're going to make that decision for you. The only thing you can do, you know, in any kind of leadership position or any kind of position as a Mason is just ask yourself, am I trying to do my best and am I trying to follow my obligation and live by it? If you do that, then you personally are a success. And then that's every endeavor. I mean, your vocation in your personal life, in your professional studies, that's the only thing. Am I striving to be my best person I can be? In the end, that's all we got.
You're right. You're right. And speaking of all that, you know, so you were talking about accomplishments and, maybe, that it's not, the immediate people won't make those decisions for you about how great you were, doing X, Y, and Z, but people later on will. So what are some things that you feel like you're probably like the most proud to have accomplished in your time as a Mason?
Oh, that's a loaded question. I feel like if I answer something like that, then maybe someone's going to say, "Oh, look, he's got, he's self-focused." No,
and I wouldn't say that. I think it's just more, we all have something that we're, and maybe it's not proud of, but you really appreciate it the most, or you feel it really touched you the best. Something that, your heart really swells when you think about it and you went, yeah, man, that was a great time. We did it.
I would say that meeting people like, another one of my heroes was Worshipful Bob Cooper, who early on, when I was going into the history of Fredericksburg Lodge, he was the Grand Historian of the Grand Lodge of Scotland and Archivist, Grand Lodge of Scotland. He took me under his wing back in 2008, I believe it was, and gave me opportunities to learn more about the history of Masonry. But what have I achieved? I mean, there's many things that I'm proud of as a Mason. I got to be part of the people that put together the Scottish Freemasonry in America Symposium. That was a proud thing. The fact that I got to participate, my Requiem for a Templar program became part of the leadership course in the Grand Commandery. That's a thing to be proud of as well. I think that it's like learning to establish a esprit de corps and something that we should already have an esprit de corps in, that took to heart for many people. The French Education Program became something to help educate Masons when the correspondence course, not the correspondence course, the catechism became something where it was a complication due to either a lack of coaches or a means to educate more people when you only have more candidates than you do coaches. While the alternate method is the set way of doing things, it was a good way to complement that in order to get people informed. I got a chance to be part of that. I know. I think the biggest thing that I did that was, having all these accolades were wonderful. I'm blessed to know people who helped me along that way. Most Jack Lewis gave me a wonderful opportunity to be a district deputy, but Tony Rudder gave me an opportunity to be master. My worshipful Dennis Haas gave me an opportunity to shine. Most worshipful Bill Hershey gave me an opportunity to shine. Most worshipful George Chapin gave me an admonishment that was very important to me at a time I needed it. Most worshipful Bernard Dungan was always a wonderful brother. Most worshipful Alan Atkins was there for me when I most needed it. Most worshipful George Bratz was there at a time when I needed him. He was a past Grand Master of Ohio, and he was the secretary of the Masonic Service Association for a while. He was a wonderful brother as well. The most significant thing as a Mason, the opportunity to teach and see brothers shine of their own accord. Watching, for example, you grow up from a kid to be running a podcast here. Watching Ethan from nothing become someone who's now doing a lot of the social media things here. Watching all these young Masons who became masters of a lodge. Watching one of them become a Grand Master himself. Jeff Van Kuren, while I didn't sign his petition, he was one of my youngest officers, and now he's past Grand Master. He's also either a potentate or a past potentate. Working with people like worshipful Chris Tripp. And I said, there's a lot of brothers out there. I'm probably going to get, hey, what about me? But, they matter. But the thing is that the people that I help teach and help teach me, those interactions, I think the greatest thing was also the roundtables that we used to do, where we got to talk at a personal level and share experience as Masons. And those were the moments that I think were mattered the most. Accolades are wonderful, but it's true that the greatest honor you can get is just to be called a brother. I do cherish that. I am grateful for the opportunity to have accolades, to be part of, like, past district deputy. It was an opportunity to express a piece of myself in a direction and to serve and support a higher and more important calling, that, be part of the Grand Master's team, to be part of different committees in Grand Lodge, where you got to shape directions of certain aspects of the Grand Lodge. Those are wonderful. But it's when you're getting a call from a brother who's asking you questions that has nothing to do with accolades, but has to do with either becoming a better Mason or a better person. When a brother hands you a letter and he's going off to harm's way and he says, if something happens to me, give this to my spouse. I held that letter in my top drawer until he came home and then gave it back to him when he was safe. To meet brothers who have done significant works, not just in Masonry, but in their own vocation. Brother Rod Dubois, all the things he did as a Navy SEAL, the fact that he's teaching people to bridge relationships is amazing. Those are the kind of relationships, and the kind that whenever you're in trouble and they look at you and they see that you're a family man and they love your family just because you are you and that you're their brother, that makes it their family too. The greatest thing in my life is my family, my wife, my kids. And I think that that's the most important thing. But if I did Masonry to their disadvantage, then that would have been terrible. But because of all these people have came to my life, they have made my family better as well. They gave my family something that they never even realized. They still probably don't realize, but every once in a while it touches them. And I've seen it. I've seen how some of the things that that Masonry had, that the people in Masonry has done, has impacted them in positive ways. They may not realize it, but I'm sitting there, oh yeah, I see that now. That's what's most important. I remember when I first became a national sojourner, I'm looking around and all the people there have young kids. And we had an open meeting so the family can participate, but we had a lot of kids. We ended up finding a way to make this something better. We have the Heroes of 76, which is an invitation organization within National Sojourners. We have the camp followers for the ladies so that they can find ways to participate and have something for themselves. But we had nothing for kids. We created the Sojuniors because we had so many kids there. And it is not a formal organization within National Sojourners, but it should be. What we did was we found ways to... The Sojuniors. We put the kids to work. And because we had a whole bunch of young kids, and so what we had them doing is we took them to a room where they were drawing pictures and they would put together care packets and they would write letters, and those went to the soldiers and sailors and Marines and airmen overseas. And they did that during the War on Terror, much back in 2005, 2006, 2007, during that timeline. They were sending those things to servicemen overseas. And over time, these kids grew up and they're now adults. But we found a way to where they can, in a situation of necessity, we found a way to make it productive for them to learn to care about someone else by sending a letter saying thank you by drawing a picture for someone and to put care packages together and have that sent over. And I sit there, why did we let this go away? When you have the DMLA, young kids that are coming in and they're learning a bit of the Masonic lessons, and then they get a chance to go out and shape other people, why do we let these things falter? The Rainbow and the Jobies, while these young ladies, they will never be able to become Masons themselves. But one day in the future, they're going to mold a young man in a way not to dictate to them, but to direct them towards something that might be better, like Masonry. They might give them a chance to have that opportunity. I mean, we see that in the Rainbows for a long time. The Rainbows, didn't have to be a Mason's daughter to be a Rainbow, But what happened is they can come in themselves, and then they have the Rainbow dads who are the ones that, because their daughters were Rainbows, they became Masons. Why can't they do that with those that they date and they marry, who might see something new in Masonry that they never even knew of? Why do we let that go to ground? We need to find better ways. Now, of course, we all do. I always say that there is nothing worse than an idle Mason. There is an extreme between in Masonry, in my opinion. This the way I express it is that on one side there's nothing worse than an idle Mason, and then on the other side, no good deed goes unpunished. There's a reality somewhere in the middle there. It's like the lost word. And for those in the public who are not Masons, I'm going to give you a little secret of Masonry, and that is the lost word of a Master Mason, which is the word no. Sometimes we forget what that is, but the thing is, we're so busy doing all these good works that we sometimes do it to the detriment of ourselves and our family, because we want to help. But the thing is that if we can find ways to help others find ways to do things, then that is productive. That is good. So I would say that in all these lessons, I think the shared connections with people that I've never been able to connect with is the greatest thing about Masonry to me. The accolades, nice, not important. The title brother, and when those brothers call upon you because you've had an impact on their life, or they think that you can impact their life for the better still, when they call you for help, when they call you to ask you a question, those are the cherished moments. Those are the memories that life is about memories. And in the end, all you have is the ability to cherish or lament about memories. The rapport and the relationships that come with those rapports is the most important thing as a Mason. I think that is what I cherish most. There are a lot of wonderful brothers, and I know that I want to say all the ones that have done some wonderful things for me. And I'm blessed that there are so many that I'm missing names. There's the only way I can express it.
Of course. As always, that's the best part about this organization. So you spoke about Requiem for a Templar. Can you expound on that a little bit more?
Yeah. When I was the eminent commander of Fredericksburg Commandery No. 1 of Knight Templars, I got a call, or as a letter, from a lady who's trying to find more information about an ancestor. And she was asking, can you help me with this? And I said, sure. And she gave me the name. I did the research and found that it was a brother who was a member of this lodge, and he was one of the charter members of Fredericksburg Commandery No. 1, which on October 18th will be celebrating its 150th anniversary. and happily so. But what happened was, it was a brother who was also, I believe, also a master. He was a member of Fredericksburg Lodge. So I collected all this information about him, sent it to her, and she said, "Well, I had very few things about information about him, but I had a couple of items. Would you like to see him?" And I said, "Sure." Well, she had a lapel pin with a square and compass on it, and I found out, I can't remember the brother's name, but he owned Chatham Heights, the Chatham Manor up here in Chatham Heights. It was his family, his in-laws from Pennsylvania purchased it for him. He owned it. He was a doctor, and but the most important part of it was a document that came from 1876, and it was a resolution from Fredericksburg Commandery Number 1. And when you read it, it says, "We acknowledge that this brother died, that the Lord took him for his own reasons and purposes, and that we here will miss him." But as you read this document, this resolution that was given by Fredericksburg Commandery Number 1 in 1876, it is a beautiful document that talks about the ways that you're going to miss this brother. And I'm sitting thinking, we don't talk like this anymore. And what happened that we don't speak like this about our own brothers? And so what I did is I started writing about it, and I came to a realization that, as a Knight Templar, we have many bonds. We have the obligations, our Masonic obligations. We have our duties as Royal Archmasons. We also, for those who are outside of Virginia, West Virginia, have our cryptic obligations as well, or commitments as well. We also have our Templaric relations as freighters. And even in the Knight Templars, where we all have to be Christian, or for the most part Christian, you don't have to be Christian, but you have to protect Christianity is the idea behind it. We have those bonds as well, plus our Christian bonds as Christian people. We have all these bonds. Why are we not closer and closer and closer with all that? And then I start showing some of the different organizations in the world that has this, what we call an esprit de corps, a bond. And I mentioned like the Marine Corps, the Navy SEAL, the Gurkhas, the French Legionnaires, and how they have this esprit de corps that bonds them. And then I talk about all the old bonds that should bring us together. And it's not just for Knight Templars. This is for Masons and for people. For all the things that we hold in common, why does that not make us closer as a people and as a species? But the thing is that more to the lines of Templary, we have multiple bonds that should make us closer and should have it. And that's when I think it was, I believe it was Joe Martinez, who was at the time, he was part of another commandery, I think Sinclair Commandery. It's a brand new one, I believe. But he was also master of Manassas Lodge. I believe it was at that time when we were expressing that with the Grand Commandery. They were teaching this at their leadership course. I think at that time he was the one that said that. He was the one that actually said that if you can't look him in the eye and say I love you, mean it, then maybe you should. He was the one that actually said that, but that was something that I took to heart. So when I look at you, I say to a brother, "I love you, brother." It's like if you're my sibling. I want to truly mean that, and I do mean that. Of course, siblings can fight, and there would be no difference when we don't see eye to eye. We can argue about certain points, but I would always be there for you.
And I'd always be there for you too. In fact, it's probably one of the best things about being chaplain here at the lodge is basically having that opportunity. I think, when I was younger, when I was coming into the lodge at 18, I think probably one of the biggest things that I struggled with was kind of, well, who said that you could do that? Who gave you that kind of authority, if you will, right? And I think that might be one of the reasons why I wore the square and compasses so much back then, right? Was, sitting there going, well, of course I'm going to do the right thing. Here's my little, good guy badge, right? And it's kind of dumb to think about now, right? Looking back, but at the time, when you're young, you're just so unsure of yourself, so much. So I actually use that as an opportunity. And, when brother Pat McConnell in his wisdom put me as chaplain, at first I panicked. I'm going to be totally honest with you. I totally panicked and I didn't know where I was going to go with it. But over time I was like, no, I'm going to learn this. I'm going to figure this out. And one of the best parts, probably one of the best lessons that I learned is actually there's a book. It's called On Being a Masonic Chaplain. And it's from brother, his last name is Elsner. I can't remember his name off the top of my head right now. But he actually went into the story of St. Martin of Tours, right? And how, so he's this Roman cavalryman, and, he's in Gaul, which is now modern day France. And he's in this town called Amiens, and he comes across this naked beggar, and he takes his cape, his kappa, his cloak, right? And this thing was, this is your whoopee, this thing is like the real deal, but you're wearing it as a cape. And he actually took it, he cut it in half and he gave it to this poor beggar. And then he just kind of moved on about his day. And then later on that night, Jesus comes to him in a dream, and it's this whole, he's introducing the angels to him, and he says, this is the one that gave me, his cloak. He cut his cloak in half and gave it to me, and he wakes up and suddenly it's, his kappa is back in one piece, and it's this really beautiful thing, this concept of sharing your cloak with people. And so I think what you're saying really resonates, this idea of, being able to kind of dive deeper, explore that, really find that human connection, those bonds that so many people, it surprises me what people won't do to each other, right? In the worst ways and in the worst senses. And yet there are moments where you find it's amazing what people won't do for each other either, it's amazing to look at, these genuine stories of, pure love, right? Coming from one person to another. And it makes a difference. It makes a huge difference in the world. So I think we both resonate very deeply on that one. So what's something that you would consider, I guess, what's something that you would tell to somebody who's considering becoming a Mason?
I would say that it's, for me, I think that I'd like to think that it made me a better man, a better husband, better father. I would like to think that it would be beneficial to them, but it has to be from their heart. It has to be something that they want to do. There are people out there who just don't want to be Masons. There's people who make excuses not to be Masons because they don't know better. I've had opportunity. I ask someone, how come you're not a Mason? Oh, I got too much to do. I'm like, well, the truth is, we all got too much to do, but it's just they don't know what they don't know. They know that what they need to know, first of all, is that you make the opportunities, because everybody's busy. Even as a Mason, even when I wasn't a Mason, I was always busy. I found ways to make time. Sometimes to the detriment of myself, but I do. I used to tease that my cable tow was a bungee cord, and that I had to learn to fix that problem. Still do sometimes, but I do think that for becoming a Mason, I think that if you're willing to look at yourself and say that I can be more than this, that I want to be more than this, that I want to help the world by first helping myself, fixing myself. I don't want you to join just because you think that you're going to get something out of it, one of the biggest problems we have is everybody thinks that we're trying to help ourselves. One of the ways I explain that is that if I was the government and I was giving out a contract, and let's say you wanted that contract and there's a bunch of other people and there's a bid for it, and you're a Mason, but they're not. As a Mason, if somebody else gives me a better bid by far, it would be the right thing for me to reject you, even though you're a brother, and give it to them. That would be the proper thing to do. And I would do that. But if you gave me a bid and that other person gave me a bid and they were pretty close, the way that this would work out is I don't know a lick about that person. I know you have taken an obligation to live by higher standards, to try to strive to be better and to do more, and that you have obligated yourself to work within that spiritual temple within yourself. I am more inclined to give that contract to you because that would be the extra kicker in there. And I also know that it would be my obligation to myself and to my vocation to hold you to account to that you would do such. But I also know that because I know what you went through and what you're trying to do, it would be easier to give you that opportunity than the other person, so long as that bid is fairly close. And, it would be a terrible thing to me, and in many ways, in my personal opinion, unmasonic for me to give it outright to you just because you're simply your brother. I do know a situation where someone tried to become a Mason because they were told that it would improve their lot in getting opportunities at their work. And they never did anything with it. They pretty much ended up getting suspended because they were, I don't know who told them that, but they decided that's how they were going to do it. And I found out later on that's why they did it. It's a tragedy because had they not been so focused on trying to gain something, they probably actually would have gained something more important, something bigger, something better. Masonry will yield its treasures up to those who earn them through toil. It just may not be the kind of treasures you think it is. So if you're looking for something greater than personal gain, if you're looking for the kind of personal gain that is not personal gain, you're going to receive personal gain. And I think that that's the kind of thing that I would hope for anybody looking to become a Mason would be looking for. But you got to have it in your heart. It's a lot of people say, well, this is not fun. No, it could be fun, but it's also work. The thing is that when you go into a lodge, you're going in to do labor. While you're doing that, you can enjoy the moments with each other if you take the time to do such. I've had quite some amazing moments among brothers during ritual where we were even laughing because, that camaraderie. But at the same time, going to the different places afterwards, like going to Jay Bryant's, going to Sammy T's, going to Kenmore Inn at one time. Those were some very shared memories that I cherish because, it's like always having a toast to the craft and bonding and just relaxing and enjoying each other's company, even teasing each other, not in a very negative way, or going fishing with Most Worshipful Don Roby over at his house. Those were memories to cherish as well. The opportunity, it's like I went fishing one time with Most Worshipful John Chambliss when he was Grand Master and I was the Master of the Lodge with Right Worshipful Steve Sanford and Most Worshipful Don Roby. Don Roby was amazing. He was always fun to be around and funny, and he was a very knowledgeable brother as well. I mean, Most Worshipful Ed Cohen, who just recently passed away, I remember when we were doing the leadership correspondence course over at B.J. Simmons, they came out with course number 4, and they just put it out there. He was the very first person to finish that test. We're all sitting down to write it up. This is before it was online. It was like you had a sheet of paper, you had the Masonic Digest in a book, and you're looking for all the answers, and we're doing that. He went right to that thing, checking everything out. Boom, 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 boom. He was done before anybody else. And it was like Jeff Sinange was, right from Jeff Sinange was the second one to finish, then I was the third. But the thing is that he beat us so much more. This was a guy with an amazing mind, very sharp, very knowledgeable. It's like, you also got people like, most works with Jeff Hodges, who is a very special and intelligent, knowledgeable man, scholar. Truly cares, I think. You had a lot of brothers like that, and there are many of those brothers in Grand Lodge. But the thing is that these are people who always try to encourage us to make sure that when the most important thing about bringing people in is how you treat them. I mean, if we're sitting there, I remember one time, I'm stuck in traffic with Right Worshipful Jeff Sinange going to Grand Lodge. We're stuck on 95 traffic, and we're stopped. And then we see a car. We're in the fast lane on the far left. We see this car blow right by us, going as fast as he can on the shoulder. And as he went right by, you saw that square and compass on the back of the car. You know how terrible that made us feel, seeing that, and we're sitting there, we're like, that is someone who had, possibly, very likely a Mason, and they did that. I mean, how do we do that?
Yeah, that's not living it.
So the thing is that we represent the craft. Every single one of us is an ambassador. How we treat people and how we dispose of them reflects upon the craft as a whole, not just your Grand Lodge, not just your lodge, internationally. People will remember that. There's a saying that when you do something good, one person will say it. When you do something bad, 10 people will say it. But the thing is that when I saw that was a lesson to be learned. But how we treat people as we bring them in the door is the most important thing. And when they're young Masons, don't ever make them a Tyler. A Tyler should be a position of the most knowledgeable brother you can find. Because when you go in to the lodge room to do the works that we do, that one person is supposed to deal with the outside world by himself. He should be knowledgeable enough to know how to do everything when everybody else is locked away in a tiled lodge room. But at the same time, you put a brand new Mason in there, he's not learning anything. He's outside the lodge, not learning what's going on inside.
That reminds me of Dan Thompson. So I remember, when was it? This was probably 2013 to 2015, I want to say. Mm-hmm. On Wednesday nights, he was our secretary for, I don't know how, forever, right? Mm-hmm. But in, during Wednesday meetings, he would actually sit out there as Tyler. And, I always thought, man, that seems kind of unfulfilling, right? You're just kind of sitting there. But seeing where he's at now, or he was, at least where he was at the time, but definitely now, right? I could totally see why he, was just so willing to sit out there and say, okay, that's fine. You guys go in there, you guys have the most fun. I'll sit out here talking with the guys who are interested and want to learn more about Freemasonry. Or if not, if nobody's out here and it's just a boring night, then I'm just going to work on, my secretary stuff, Yeah. I was a genius for it. Yeah,
I was. The Tyler job is a special job in that sense. We should give it more recognition in that sense. I actually remember when Michelle Malone was the Tyler of the lodge. This was a very quiet, gentle kind of man. Much like Patrick McConnell in that sense, where you can tell he actually cares about people. Michel Ballon was like that. He was quiet. He actually was French, but he spent many years since 1950s in America. He was a pilot for Air France, but he was very quiet. I didn't know much about him. I got to Lodge on a Wednesday real late, and he's there as Tyler. And I'm an officer of the Lodge. I'm supposed to be inside, but I decided I'm so late that I might as well stay out here. And I'm sitting there talking with him. And he opens up to me and tells me he was at one time in his life, he was part of the French Resistance. I don't know how we got in that conversation, but he started telling me about that. And I'm like, oh, my Lord. This is a guy who's telling me not just the fact that he was part of the French Resistance during World War II, but how Masonry had a part in it. And I'm like, we got to record this thing. So I started talking to people. I believe it was like I told Sandy Mackey and Right West Rose, Steve Sanford, Right West Jeff Sinange, and Worship Brother Chris Decker, and there's people like that. And we were talking about how we need to get this. I was telling them when I found out we need to get this recorded, and we had a sojourner meeting where he was the guest speaker, and he told us everything. We got it recorded. It's on YouTube right now. Talking about not just his experience from a 12-year-old child helping the French Resistance after the Nazis take over France, but how he helped by meeting with this Italian colonel who hated the Germans and hated Mussolini, and he was just running at the mouth, and they were taking it back to the French Resistance, who would report the information. And so that's how he started as a kid like that. He also, as a young kid, knew something about flying, even back then. But by the time World War II is over, he has served as a soldier in the French Resistance, received the Croix de Guerre, the War Cross. The French War Cross is one of the highest honors. And he has flown 4 bombing missions as a pilot. He was entered, once he got out of the French Resistance, helping 3 OSS agents escape after training the French Resistance. He helped them escape to Spain. And then he ended up waiting for his godfather, who was a French general. He ended up joining the British SAS, did 5 drops, hurt his wings. Then he was told to get out of that uniform, and then he went to Morocco, where he was at Casablanca, where he was introduced to a American program for French citizens to learn how to fly planes. And then afterwards, he was sent to Marrakesh, where he learned to fly different fighter crafts, American fighter crafts like the Mustang, the Flying Fortress and such, and he flew 4 missions before the war was over. But the fact that he talks about Masonry and the French Resistance, between Tony Rudder, Dennis David, Chris Decker, and myself, we pulled together all the information on this to talk about his story and Masonry's story about the French Resistance. And it became a program which has even been given to people on the other side of the pond about how the Nazis treated Masons and how the French Resistance had a part in the Masonic story as well. And that's a wonderful presentation to give. But the thing is, it shows how we are all so connected to each other as well. But the thing is that it was from a guy who was a Tyler of our lodge. This came out of his mouth. And it became such an amazing story about Masonry. And it was just a matter of getting the sources of information, the sources, and documenting them and putting this paper together, which was an amazing story to give the world and to Freemasonry about it.
Man, because I remember I don't know if you really want to call it a privilege, but to me it was. I was there when in 2015 for Memorial Day when we interred his ashes.
Yeah.
I remember taking a scoop, and I didn't know him at the time, right? But I said, whoever this brother was, obviously he meant something to everybody there because you could just see it on their faces. And so and it's funny, just looking back at all of that and thinking, man, and especially if we had the opportunity then that we have now with this whole podcast thing, you know, I would have loved to have had him on here. I mean, just imagine this kind of, you know, having him speak all about it. That would have been amazing. Yeah. I'd love to be a fly on the wall, or maybe sitting in this very seat.
Yeah. You know what's one of the most amazing things about being a Mason, especially in this lodge? In the world, basically, but, you know, I mean, I guess there's other institutions that you can do that, you know, especially ones with the more, with the longer timeline, is that you stand on the shoulders of others before you. And it's like your works are not just your works, they're the works of others as well. I mean, for example, doing things in history, the works of Masonic history especially. When I do a paper, I'm standing on the shoulders of people like, let's go far back. We go to Gulrick, we go to Savannah Quinn, we go back to people like Travis Walker, Mark Tabbert, Sean Iyer, Bob Cooper. We're going to all these people who were scholars in their own right, who have done great works in our research of our history. And then I get to sharpen steel and steel with scholars such as the brothers throughout, or the scholars throughout our own jurisdictions, such as Chris Tripp, Jake Chineri, even do so with some like people like Mark Brinkley, Ken Brinkley. All these people who write papers. And then also outside of it, you know, like I deal with a lot of research lodges. We got brothers like Hawksburg, out of New York and New Jersey area, and Don Alfred out of New Jersey. But the thing is that it's like sharpening steel and steel. But the thing is that you're standing on their shoulders for the labors that brothers before you have done. And you get a chance to add and contribute a part of yourself to it. I mean, needless to say, Travis Walker did amazing work with that book because he took all the documents that we had in this lodge and he put it into a book that everybody can review and read and research. Because it's all there. He chronicled everything that was in the minutes, that was in our archives, as best he could. But he also got information from Savannah Quinn, who wrote books on this. And I forgot Brother Gulrick's first name, but he did that as well. There's a lot of breadcrumbs to the books that they wrote that gives us further research and adding to it, because there's still mysteries to be found in our own history in Fredericksburg Lodge, let alone Masonry in general. So we're standing on the steps, standing on the shoulders of others. And it's not just history. It's also in legacy. It's also in perpetuating this lodge, the people before you and the things you learn from them. In this lodge, a lodge is basically a charter and brothers, or it can be the building. But the thing is what makes it connect is mentor, student, membership to membership as you go on, and it perpetuates. And you're learning, and we're learning from the same lessons that people did 400 years ago. It's the same lessons, and we're only adding or putting ourselves, becoming part of that legacy and passing it on. You're part of all that. So it's an amazing thing to realize that, you know, you stand on the shoulders of the giants before you. And maybe you just add a little bit more height to that as time goes on.
You know, that, yeah. You know, and we owe it to the next generation to become giants ourselves. So, you know, like you look back at, like, for instance, the Regis poem, you know, or the Regis manuscript, you know, you look back at that and you go, man, these are all things that we talk about today, you know? So yeah, it's a success, thus through a succession of ages, you know? So, well, before we wrap anything up, is there anything that you'd like to add? The mic's totally yours.
I think I've said enough. One of the things that is about me is I can be verbose at times, and that's another lesson for me. I'm trying to be more brief about how I do things, but I am honored to be here because I've always wanted other brothers to find something that they can call theirs, to perpetuate the honor of this lodge. Never on borrowed honor means how can we perpetuate this legacy, this wonderful legacy that we have in this lodge. The things that we do outside of it for the lodge and the things that you do like this is amazing. The fact that we have brothers who learn the ritual, learn the lectures. You've learned the lectures. You started off as a young Demon Lake kid and you went right into becoming a Mason, and you jumped into it. We got a lot of young brothers who's been doing that. There's a lot of good brothers who are actually guiding that. You have brothers like Worshipful Master Mike Dove, Seth Roderick, Brother Seth Roderick, and the incoming officers are doing much to give a venue for these brothers to express themselves. This is a beautiful thing. The glory of this, the glory that people want to find in doing things for the lodge has to be the labors that we do for it and Masonry and ourselves. I'm glad that there's so many activities going on that benefits not just the lodge, but the community. Fredericksburg, the community of Fredericksburg is blessed because of so many brothers who are willing and people who are out there making this community better. And I'm proud of my lodge being part of that, and I'm proud of Masonry getting back to the basics of taking care of their communities wheresoever dispersed we all are. And I'm going to say thank you for this wonderful journey. And I hope that I continue, that I hope that when the brothers see me, that they see just another brother who is attempting to always raise up his working tools. Thank you.
That's beautiful. Thank you. All right, we're going to close it off.